All right. We're going to try this again. Hey, everybody. Sorry we're a few minutes late. I actually have been talking to nobody for the past 5 minutes because I had not clicked on the go live. I thought that I had when I added my picture to this. Um, so here we are. Now I can see if this is actually showing on our Facebook page. And uh, I think I need a producer. I think that would really help me. Somebody who doesn't isn't talking and trying to think of the 14 things that we need to do all at once. Hey guys, Serena, Sarah, good morning. Sorry I'm 5 minutes late. I had not hit the go live button. Let me tell you, it was solid gold what I talked about for the last 5 minutes. Good morning, Chelsea. Good morning. Hey, James Wilder is here. For those of you authors that are here that don't know, James is another author friend of mine. He's not with Four Horsemen, but Jim, tell me, did your book just come out? I've been seeing a lot about it. I just didn't know if it was released or if you were just doing announcements. I can't remember. Keep in mind it's 8 a.m. and oof. Yes, it did. Why don't you share a link in here and we can share it with people so they can see what you're doing. And actually, I'm going to talk about you a little bit today. Oh, hi, Becca. Good to hear you, or have you hear me? I don't know how you even say this. Good that you're here. Yeah, one of the things I wanted to talk about was actually something that we had done together. So I want to talk about that a little bit. In fact, Sarah, Jim is the one who I mentioned yesterday, and you'll know what I mean momentarily. So let's go back to what I was talking about before everybody got to join me. I was talking about time management, dealing with projects. This is whether you're talking marketing, which marketing does take up a fair amount of time, or you're putting out a new book. Not even the marketing part of it, but you got to write. Or you've got things, balls in the air. For example, like with me, I have a podcast network. Uh, if you, if I really was doing my job there, still, even though we've let pretty much everybody go and we're just focusing on a few things, I would still have to manage all that content that I still have. That technically could be a full-time job. I ignore it. I do things here and there, and it's like feeding the fish occasionally. I feel like I throw some flakes in, and all of a sudden, like on This Week in Geek, I'll get all these people writing on it, and I'm like, oh, I should really put some effort into this. Uh, then on top of it, there's this. Well, what started this thought process was this big catalog project that I've been doing with someone from Four Horsemen, who's been working with me on it, helping me get these pages done and get this thing ready. And we've missed a couple of deadlines that we had self-imposed, mainly because of another topic we've talked about on here. When something's wrong, go to burn it to the ground and fix it. It's better to get something good and workable, and uh, that's a good tool rather than forcing something out there and going, we'll fix it in post. This happens in video games all the time now. They'll put out video games and then the reviews will be like, it's broken, it's janky. We'll do a patch and we'll fix it. Yeah, but why did I spend $60 or more for something broken? So you think about where things are broken. Where can you burn things to the ground and fix them if you have to? That doesn't mean get caught in that trap. Uh, with the one that I'm with this catalog, I've burned it to the ground, I think 3 times, maybe 4. It is now 95% of the way there. I mean, it is darn close. And I have another idea that I want to add to it, which technically could be a, hey, let's burn it to the ground and put it out there. But it's not an idea that needs to burn it to the ground. It's an idea that enhances what's there. So we can put this great thing out. People will be really happy with it. And then we can go back and we can add a little patch that makes it even better, but it wasn't broken. It's not janky going out. Um, I diverted there for a second. So anyway, I've been thinking a lot about this week because this project has consumed a lot of my waking hours. On top of it, we had relatives in, and we were I have to be there and I want to be there. These are really close family members. We're like, we want to be involved in all this. I want to go to everything, but at the same time, I had to keep working. So I'd have to get up extra early, do some work. We'd go out and I try to have that work-life balance. What's happened though, that I've noticed this week that actually kept me up last night is the other stuff that I've kind of let go by the wayside. I've done little bits on it. Did a little bit with the social media thing, did a little bit with pour over, did a little bit with my consulting, but a lot of it I have not been able to put the focus that I normally like to. And that's really what I want to pose to you. How do you get around that? How do you deal with that? Because when you have a big project, whether it's I'm building a social media calendar, I'm writing my book, I've got to sit down and draw and I need hours alone, or I'm at the deadline, I've got a Kickstarter coming out. How do I not get distracted by that alone? What is it you do to keep that work-life balance and to keep the work balance? Oh, I just coined a phrase that I'm sure I didn't coin. Okay, so I mentioned Jim has a book out. The book was a labor of love, and I think you'll enjoy it too. So there's a link to it. Academy 27 School Days, #1, implying there will be more than that. I can't stress enough how much fun Jim is, how much fun his books are. Support authors, share this. That brings up a topic we're going to talk about. So there you go, James. I'll put that also in the show notes too. So anybody watching can just click right on it. And then Chinto wrote, when buying games, always expect disappointment and you'll never be disappointed. No, I disagree with that. You should expect it to be right. I never go into a game thinking I'm going to be disappointed. Even crappy games, I look for where it's just like going to a movie or reading a book. I'm rooting for it to be good. I'm rooting for the right thing. And I actually think I go into it not wanting to be disappointed, and I'm rarely disappointed. It seems like the modern age where they patch everything is where you get a little bit of disappointment, or they add currency to it, or things that screw you up. But no, Chinto, I will not go into it always expecting disappointment. I refuse. Maybe that's just me. So Helldivers 2, I went in with no expectation, and I love it. See? Although that doesn't make my point at all. But it's good. I like the trailers on it. I think that looks good. Okay, Chelsea. Yeah, that's my struggle, balancing. I'm writing 3 books right now, a mom and working. Marketing social media goes silent for like a week sometimes because I can't find or make time to do it. Yeah. So, Chelsea, let's talk about that a little bit. I know I've already thrown out about 18 topics. That's okay. That's what today is. So the way you can get around that, and it's hard to do it in the throes, because right now is when you realize you need to do this. Right now is when you realize you need, oh, I need these tools in my toolbox, but you're already in the thick of it. You've already started building the house, and you're like, crap, I don't have the right saw. If you're in the middle of 3 books, you would hope that you had the right saw to go into it. And I always forget. I always have to go to the hardware store. Listen to this analogy. I'm just stretching out here. So, the easiest way to balance that social media and marketing thing, it takes a little bit of work up front. So you need to set time aside. You need to say, like, I know tomorrow's Easter, so you're not doing it tomorrow, but if you celebrate Easter, but maybe today, carve out even an hour, okay, and make yourself. You don't even have to start by making a content calendar for the things you want to do to keep you on pace. You need to write kind of a goals and then a topic. So here's what I mean. And I just misspoke, not a topic, but you'll see what I mean. So if I'm Chelsea and I know I've got to keep my social media up, first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to write down how many days a week I need to make sure something goes to. So in your case, I would say 3 days a week is very appropriate. And then I would say, okay, what is my goal with my social media and where is it going? So if I have Instagram, Twitter, Facebook, TikTok, you need to go, okay, do all of them. Hey, look, I got a thumbs up. Somebody liked my idea. It was actually me. It was whatever triggered that. I have no idea what triggers it. There's one where, let's see if I can do it, where it does confetti falling and skyrockets too. Uh, so you write down what your social media platforms are and how they tie together and what ones are important. So if your audience, if you've got a tiny audience on Twitter, well, don't make new content for Twitter during this period. Okay? Share the content that you're making for Facebook and Instagram over to Twitter. That just saved you some time. But when you make this thing, you say, here's how often I'm going to post, here's where it goes and how they tie together. I can post to Facebook through Meta and have it also post to Instagram. Boom, two birds, one stone. 3 days a week. If I'm in the middle of writing, I just have to plot out maybe 2 months, maybe a month at a time, whatever works for you. And know that that's a minimum. That's all I need to do, right? Now go back and you make kind of a chart where you've got Monday, Wednesday, Friday, 2 p.m., 2 p.m., 2 p.m. I'm just picking numbers. So you know when you're supposed to post to these things. And you can write on there Instagram, Facebook, whatever, if it's different. If I do 2 o'clock on Instagram and Facebook, I do 5 p.m. on Twitter. I like to do TikTok. I just have fun with it. So I do it like once every morning. I do one. Great. Put that on this so you can clearly see your schedule, what you need to do, when you're going to do it. Now, this is the part that's fun. Uh, Forget all that for a second. On another piece of paper, write down what your post can be. Post ideas. If every one of them is, I'm going to post that my book's available. Guess what? Boring. Do I want to get that news out there? Yeah. So maybe I put it once a week that one of my posts is going to be, hey, my book just launched, blah, blah, blah. Or maybe if I have a book coming out or something that is releasing, I up it to 5 days a week so that my 3 days are kind of consistent. One day I do I do one for engagement. So I say Wednesdays, I'm always going to ask a poll question. And if you're doing 2 months at a time, you need to write down 8 questions. Write them down. I'm going to do pictures from the con I was at. Great. Just write that down and write which con. So you go like, oh, today I'm going to feature, Indie PopCon, and this one I'm going to feature C2E2, and this one I'm going to feature, when I did a thing in a store or a library. And then for your third one, maybe do something that's in world for what you do. If you're an artist, I'm going to show some behind the scenes drawings. Maybe I have characters. I'm going to get a pop vinyl of one of my characters, and I'm going to take it around and take it in pictures of it in places that would be bizarre for the world of that character. So I've got this character, and it's a sci-fi novel, and I take it to a hot dog place, and I take a picture. I'm like, well, I was on Earth and grabbed some hot dogs. And every Friday, I'm going to post pictures of this pop vinyl in these different places. So now you've got what the content is, and you've got a plan, you have a schedule, and you know where it's going. This is going to take you about an hour, is my guess. 2 hours, you could create all the content and schedule it out for the month. So after we finish today, by noon, not even, by 11 o'clock, Chelsea, you could have the whole thing done for the whole month. Take it off your plate. You don't have to think about it. It's hard. It's hard. The work balance is tricky. And And that's what I'm experiencing. Like I'm seeing things that I know I've got to take care of this week, and I also know that there is no doubt that this catalog has to be done. It's just like it's just looming, and that's where it gets tricky. And then on top of it, that social media stuff. Now I have created the social media stuff so that I'm prepared as best I can be, but it's tricky. And Chelsea, you can always write me too if you're like, wait, how do I do it, or I need a little help with this? Just write to me, and we can talk about it. Okay. I mean, you know how to reach me. Okay. So before I jump in, are there more questions? More questions. Here, I'm going to open this again and try to copy. Oh, it won't let me. More plugs for Jim. I'm going to go to Amazon, and I'm going to open it up into a screen share so people can see this cool cover. I love it. I think it's a lot of fun. And while I'm at it, I'm going to share this show to my personal feed. Maybe we'll get more people watching. Okay, Amazon. This is where I need a producer, somebody I can say, hey, I want this, and then I turn around and it's boom, up on my screen. But that's not the world I live in the moment. And here we go. So I'm going to share screen and see how this works. There we go. There's Jim's new book, Academy 27, School Days. Very cool. And I love this cover. I think this cover is really fantastic, Jim. So there you go, everybody. Pick up Academy 27. It is on, let's see, I can't go by the Kindle price on there. Kindle price, $2.99. Let's help him like jump to the top of the Kindle world. Paperback's $12. Either way, help this guy out. Buy some books. Oh, and then Jim can buy your books. And we can get a whole thing going where everybody's supporting each other, whether you're getting them free and it's building that type of interest, or you're buying it and helping the cause. Either way. So I had a big, long discussion yesterday with a couple of different people. One of them is on this phone call, and we were talking about Patreon. Sarah just yelled out, "That's me!" We're talking about Patreon. Do you know yesterday I had 2 full-on Patreon discussions with people, and I realized it's probably important that we talk about this aspect of what we do. And believe it or not, Patreon is another, you could view it as another, you can use it, you view it as like a retail store. Not really, but you could. You could use it as another social media platform, very much so. And also a pipeline to you and your audience. What people don't know is you don't have to use Patreon. There are lots of different ways you can do this. But I want to talk about what you can do. And we're going to go back to Jim in a second, because we did something that I think is a great idea for those of you that are creating. It's an example, and we didn't use it for Patreon, but now I'm kicking myself and going, oh, we should have totally done this. So you're a creator. Okay. Now doesn't go for entrepreneurs. If you've got a lawn landscaping business, you're not going to have a Patreon. This is for people that are creating events, writing books, making movies, artists, where people can support you and your art. One thing to keep in mind with that is the people that are supporting you there, number one, you have to reach them and you have to ask. Okay. You have to say, hey, can you support my Patreon? You have to actively market it. And don't be afraid to send messages through your messenger to your friends to say, hey, I've got a Patreon up. Ginto Smart guy. I mean, you could show tips about lawn care. Are you going to pay $5 a month to see their occasional tips about lawn care? Pictures or raffles? Yeah. Okay. So we're going to get into all of this. So first of all, with Patreon, uh, it's not a bad idea to have it. Okay. It's actually a really good idea, but it is work. So you have to go into it committed to it. You have to say, you know what? I need to have a Patreon, because what's the purpose of the Patreon? The Patreon is not to just pay for your next project. It's to support you, the artist. And if you remember that, then what you do there will not just be fluffy, this means nothing. You'll have a purpose to it. You'll have an agenda to it that you need to put forward. Now, that doesn't mean everything is heavy handed. Buy my book. No, that means you're building, you know that the audience that's there, that is paying you $5 a month, is there to support you. They like what you do. The other thing to keep in mind is they do not, most of them don't want you losing time and money for the Patreon. That is supposed to be money to keep you going. The reason I bring that up is I know a couple of guys that have a podcast, and they had this idea that worked well for them in the beginning. They had a T-shirt that was really cool that was for their show, and they got some fans to subscribe to them on Patreon, and they said, if you come in at the $20 level, you get a free T-shirt. First of all, cost on T-shirts, unless you're printing it yourself in your home, you're inching up on that $20 by the time you add shipping. You know, you may see on TeePublic, it's $14. This is awesome. And then you've got $6 in shipping, and then you have to ship it to them if you don't ship direct. Like, because some people say, like, I'm going to sign it and send it to you. Double shipping. So they had this idea, and they said what they said in there, and I watched them do it. They said, the T-shirt tier, we send it out on the second month that you're a subscriber. So you paid $20, you pay $20 again, you get the T-shirt. And it's a way to ensure that you're not losing money on the T-shirt. But are we supposed to be a retail store? Is that really what we're supposed to be with Patreon? Or are they supposed to be supporting us? Now, my friends, when they did it, they were really proud of themselves because they did make a tiny bit of money at it. The problem is that burned out, because on month 3, you're banking on people forgetting that they subscribed, and you're going to get that extra $20. But most people that were doing it were really just trying to buy a T-shirt. Okay. So if you think of it in other terms, what value can I add? What can I give that will make my fans happy? And Jim, I'm going to read that. You have a long thing there about this, but I want to keep talking about this for a second. Where is the value that you can give them? So, for example, we had a show called Enough Said. Okay. And technically we still do. Don't tell anybody that we've been recording. And it was all about Marvel TV shows and movies. And we started a Patreon, and it got no traction. What we figured out is we had to put our episodes on for free, okay, on our Patreon, so that people could go there to check out the show. And our traffic went up a little bit. We didn't get subscribers, but people were going there, and we saw they were watching our show. Then we came up with the tier that was $5 a month. And we said, okay, every month or every 2 weeks, we're going to do an episode about the Daredevil Netflix show. This was in the first season of Daredevil. So every 2 weeks. So when you subscribe at $5, you get 2 episodes brand new a month that are exclusive to our Patreon. One thing we learned early on is if you're going to do something like that, where you're creating content for it, put a time limit on it. So we let that one sit for 4 months, and then we said to the patrons that were in there, and we did have a few, we said, this is going to go live on our free feed. You've gotten it early. And the pushback was non-existent. The pushback was, oh, awesome. Then I can listen anytime from my device. Yes. They were thrilled that they got it early. Now, when we had our network Patreon, we tried a little different, where we gave out the free episodes, and then we had these exclusive episodes, and they were exclusive to you for 30 days. That worked okay too. All right. Is any of this making crazy money? No. But it did, to the people that did it, it showed value. It gave them exactly what they wanted. It did not add a lot of stress to us. In fact, the best one we did, the one that had the most success, other than the Enough Said one, was we had a show called This Week in Geek, where we talked about geek news, and it was, talking smack at each other and just having fun. And we did it in a live environment. And then when COVID hit, we switched it, and we had to do it from home. And it only lasted for a short bit, but we said, how do we do something with this? So we put up a Patreon. We gave out the free shows. At the end of the free show, after an hour of talking, we would say, okay, we're going to keep talking. We've got another half hour or so on our Patreon. Join that, and you'll hear us unfiltered, unedited, get another half hour or more. And typically it was about anywhere from 30 minutes to an hour of extra footage. We called it Enough Said This Week in Geek After Dark. And our free show would fade out. And then if you looked at the feed, you saw the free show, and then you saw one that had a lock on it. They had to pay $5 to get in on that tier. And we had a few subscribers that really liked that. And we did not release those free ones for quite a while because they had to be edited. We had to take out the swearing and, whatever else. We're like, I don't want that on our regular feed. But the people that subscribed felt like they got this inroad. I've seen people do that by having a Twitch channel streaming on here, doing live things. There's a friend of mine out of Ireland that has a big podcast that what they do is when you join their Patreon and you're at the $5 level, once a month, they do a Discord chat with them. And I've been in on it, and I've seen people saying, like, this is amazing. I'm talking right to you, Gordo. And he's like, yeah, I'm sitting here at my computer. He'll put up live video stream and that for those patrons. It's an exclusive feed. It gives them that little bit of extra, makes them feel that connection. It does exactly what you want with a Patreon. It gives that value. Jim says, when I started my Patreon, I started off treating it like it was like a Netflix for short stories. It started doing way better when I realized just what you said. They were there to support me, correct. And it wasn't about getting content for the best value, correct. Hearing about how things are going for me creative was far more important to them. Also correct. They're there to support you, the artist, you, the creator, whatever it is you're doing. Now, also be aware of how much effort you're putting into that. So, for example, Easy Allies is a video game podcast. I followed them because I noticed their podcast did okay. They were active in getting people to talk about it. So they have their free shows. And then over time, they have added 2 tiers on their Patreon. So it started with 1 tier, which is also something I recommend. Because people get all excited. Oh, I can put $20 a month. I'm going to put $50 a month. Yeah. Who's going to do that? Do you do that? But at $5 or $3? Sure. Sure. You'll throw that in there for your creator friend and just let it ride. Right? So they added they had a $5 tier, they added a $10 tier, and then they had the free stuff. So they have all this free stuff going out. Then they started adding these weekly shows. They were video shows where it was basically video versions of their show with like a half hour extra. That was $5 tier. At the $10 tier, they made brand new shows. New concept shows. So the one might be just a video game review show. Well, it was actually like discussion about new games. That's what their show was based on. At the $10 tier, you got a playthrough review of the game with the guys sitting there joking around, playing the game. It was fun. It was fun to watch. If you've ever watched Twitch, it was exactly that. But they didn't just throw it out on Twitch for free. You had to actually pay to watch it. It was great. Did that add extra work to what they were doing? Yes. Sure. But now they're getting paid for that extra work. Whereas when we usually go into this kind of thing, we think, oh, I'm going to add these tiers and they're going to pay for the work, but they're not already paying for it. In this case, people were already paying and they knew they did a little market research. If we up this and we offer these free shows, will enough people subscribe that makes it worth my time? When I look at the end of the year, how much I spent in time and money on something, was it worth it to me? Or was I just adding to the heap that made it so I didn't have my work-life balance or my work-work balance, right? Oh, my phone is ringing. Oh, no, we have a weather thing until 10, even though it's bright and sunny out. Who knows? So I hope that made sense. Now, I want to talk about something we did with Jim that actually is a good idea as well when we start talking about creating content and what you can do with it. And I know I've talked about this before. And then I still have another thing I got to talk about with this. Coffee's good today. So wait, let's talk about this. Chinto, Twitch does have subscription, but it's only worth it when you have a minimum of 30 subs. And when you try to have a stream 5 days or the subs dwindle. Yeah, it's work. It's work. I do know people that have been very successful at Twitch that have their subscription model. When I was giving that example, it didn't mean that it had to be Twitch, but you could do that kind of thing. And in fact, before I talk about the gym thing, Chinto, you just opened up the other thing. There are other ways to do this. The subscription model is beautiful because a lot of people, you know how I mentioned the guys with the T-shirts, and they were banking on people just letting it ride. Well, if your number is low enough, people will just forget about it and let it ride. Or they'll think, oh, I'm still supporting them. $20? Am I going to support you for $20? I don't know. $5? $10? Sure. Sure. Twitch has subscriptions. So if that's your medium, if that is your marketing avenue, and you say, you know what, I am going to do streaming, whether it's games or my podcast, I'm going to commit to doing it through Twitch. And yeah, you're right. I'm going to do it 5 days a week. At 30, it does become worth it. But boy, if I had 30, I would say, how do I grow this to 60? How would I grow this to 200? Because that's when you're going to start seeing the benefits, because 5 days a week is a lot. If you've only got 30 subscribers, that's a lot. So there's Twitch, there's Patreon, there's Buy Me Coffee or Ko-fi. At one point, we had all these things moving, and we were not making a lot of money at all these things, but we did have these things in motion. And we had to Buy Me Coffee, and it was just up there. And then they added, you could make an exclusive podcast on there. So we started interviewing our podcasters, and we would say 3 questions. Actually, that was a 5-question one, 5 burning questions. Those answers were only for the subscribers on Buy Me Coffee. So we were giving them this exclusive thing. I would interview the podcaster for a live show for a podcast that I did that was on, the regular channels. But then I would take these 5 questions in. I said, hey, I got 5 more questions for you. They're going to live on our Buy Me Coffee. The people being interviewed were always like, oh, that's awesome. Sure. And I would ask goofier questions there. What do you put on your pizza? What was your favorite Christmas gift when you were a kid? What's the last great book you read? If you had to pick a soundtrack for your life, what are the 3 songs that are going to be played at your funeral? Okay? Those types of questions. And they would answer these questions and it went over on Buy Me Coffee. The problem was it wasn't worth it. It wasn't worth the effort over there because it was so small. But you think about your audience, think about what you could do. It might be worth it to do something. I just had too many irons in the fire, so it wasn't worth that. There are ways to have these subscription models. The one I'm in love with right now is Substack. I keep talking about how I haven't launched everything. I've put out a couple of posts and I've let it sit. That's because I'm building content behind it so that when I launch it, there's going to be a steady stream. It's going to be Pour Over Marketing is going to have one. There's going to be one for Podcast 101, Drop the Mic, where I'm talking about podcast stuff. And then who knows? And I'll have the free stuff. And then there'll be a barrier to entry where people can subscribe to it and get their thing every month. And where do I have the value for that? Is it live Q&As? Is it, who knows? I mean, I know, but who knows? So there we go. There's the big, long thing. Now, back to Jim. So we were doing a live podcast marathon. And before that, so Jim's a writer. He had started doing stuff with us. He had started doing a show live at the Blue Box called Tales from the Blue Light, where he was writing all this content and then he would perform it live in front of the audience. It was really cool. And then we're doing a live podcast marathon. And he also was doing a project where he had written a book and he was going chapter by chapter and he was releasing each chapter each week. And we would release a reading of it each week subsequently. Okay. So you had chapter by chapter, whatever way you experience it. And I'll tell you what, by the end of it, you wanted the book so badly, even though you'd heard the whole story. It was super cool. Great idea. So we're doing our podcast marathon and Jim wanted to be on it with 10,000 Dawns, which is what the project was called. And we're like, okay, well, how's this going to work? Because you already released the weekly one. We couldn't do that at a different day. Are you just going to do one of the old chapters or something? And he came up with this idea, which was great. And we didn't even know it because he was staying at our house that night. The next morning, he was like, yeah, I didn't sleep last night because he polled his readers about what character they wanted to see an expanded story about. And they chose Sprinkles the cat, which was a minor character in the story. And Jim's brain exploded, and he wrote this short story about Sprinkles the cat, unreleased, did it at our live podcast marathon. I'll tell you what, everybody loved it. We loved it. It was awesome. And it made you want to know more. It made you want to fall into his universe, right? It was so good and it was very funny. So Jim's sitting there like, yeah, say more about how great I am. So when I think about it, that's the kind of thing you could use with a Patreon or a Buy Me Coffee. Think outside the box. Once a month for the $5 tier, once a month, I'm going to write flash fiction on your suggestions live in front of you. I'm going to take a character from my books and I'm going to write an exclusive side story for them or about them, right? The thing is adding value. They don't want you to write a book and hand it over to them for the $5 they're paying per month. But boy, to read a short story, they're already supporting you. They're already a fan. They don't just stumble into your Patreon, right? They already dig what you're doing. So give them a little more. Something that they want to pay for. Don't just give it away every time. But think about what you give away. Because that's the other problem I see. I see so many Patreons where everything is blocked out. You got to pay. It's like, well, you're not going to reach anybody new. Have your free stuff, the stuff you're putting out in the world. And if you don't have anything, what can you do that's free stuff that would make people like what you're doing so that they want to pay to get more? And I don't mean t-shirts. I mean the value. We'll keep heaping it on, Jim. And Chinto, the value is me. You know what, Jim, or Chinto, I agree with that. You couldn't have people that love you more than my family does. So yes, you are the value. In fact, we're going to make you a tier on our Patreon. So get a date with Chinto. He's married and has a kid. He's not going on that kind of date, so settle down out there. Uh, but he'll go get tacos with you or go for sushi. Um, you're agreeing with this, right, Chinto? No. Uh, so there we go. It's a big topic, and it's one of those things like we could spend hours just breaking down things you could do. I think one thing that I do want to say, and I'm going to reiterate, is try to keep it to one tier in the beginning. Have your free stuff. Make sure you're giving away free stuff. Have your stuff that has value. Maybe I am adding a tier. If Chinto's making tacos, I might be in. Think about what value. And here's something I did with Sarah, not to call you out, Sarah, but something I asked her to do, and I challenge you guys to do too. Think about somebody who does what you do that you really respect. Okay. So I have a friend that has a podcast. It's Scott Philbrook is with Astonishing Legends, and I really like his show. Really like it. And he's a wonderful guy. I would take him as an example, and I would say, okay, first of all, you can analyze what they're doing with social media to see, oh, what are they doing for marketing and blah, blah, blah. But really, strip all that out. I'd go to his Patreon, look at what they're doing, and see what could apply. Beyond that, and this is what I said to Sarah, think about what you, as the fan, would find value in. If they said at the $20 tier, you're going to get a t-shirt, would that actually motivate you when you could just go to their online shop and buy the t-shirt? Probably not. If they had a Patreon exclusive t-shirt, if you're a subscriber already and you market that through your newsletter, yes. As a Patreon tier, unlikely. Think about somebody who you really respect, who does what you do or that you want to do. Think about what could they offer that would motivate me to click $5. All right. Colin Hay from Men at Work. I don't know if he still has it, but he had a $5, that was it, Patreon. And what he did was, I think it was once a week. It might even be more than that. It might have even been once a day. He did a recording. He would put up the camera. He'd play a song. Boom. The only place you get it is there. Jeff Tweedy from Wilco, one of my favorites. They're right there. I talk about them all the time. He has Starship Casual, which is his Substack. You get the free stuff. It tells you like updates. It might be some personal stuff about what's going on around the house. He's kind of funny about stuff. But then he has a $5 tier, or it might be like a yearly subscription for $25 or something. And what you get for that is same thing as Colin Hay. He plays covers, things he's working on, and you get these recordings. And they're edited somewhat, but I mean, like he cleans them up so they don't sound like crap. But at the same time, they are not fully produced, finished product. He sits down with his guitar. He's got a nice sounding studio, so he just records in there, and he probably clips, the beginning and the end, and he puts it out. What's great is these are unreleased things, so he can do covers. He can do a Bob Dylan cover, and he's not worried about having to pay royalties on it. And he does. He's done Velvet Underground and the Kinks and Bob Dylan. And when he does these, they're amazing. He is amazing with it. Is there value in that to me? Hell yeah. Now, here's the smart thing he does. At the end of the year, he takes the recordings, and you can, as a subscriber, you can order them as a CD. So he's not selling CDs in stores or anything. It's just, hey, if you want it, I'll burn it on a CD and send it to you. It's pretty amazing. It's pretty smart. If you're a writer, take your short stories or flash fictions for the year, throw it in there, right? You could wait a year. You finish in December. In June, or the next December, the previous year's collection comes out. So all those people that paid have that time where they got it exclusively and they're all excited about it. You take it down, then you release it as a book later, and guess what? They're into it. And you don't even have to go through a publisher at that point. If you're like, you know what, I'm just going to go to Amazon, I'm going to, do my own self-publishing thing on this little short story thing, exclusive to my patrons. Or at that point, anybody can get it, but it's only this, ebook version through KDP that, man, I got it all year. I got to get the KDP, got to get the book. Okay, Chelsea, let's address this. I'm just so nervous to do a Patreon because maybe it's my imposter syndrome. I don't think anyone cared enough to join. So that's where coaching comes in, Chelsea. I totally understand that. Starting this show, I had really bad imposter syndrome, even though I'm like, no, I know what I'm doing. And I think you guys can see I know what I'm doing. But boy, I thought nobody's going to watch this. Nobody's going to pay attention. And what if I just stumble through it and I look like an idiot? What if I am an imposter? And I got over it. I still don't have an ego about it, but I'm like, oh, this should grow. This is really cool. I love doing this show. Getting over imposter syndrome, 90% of it is jumping in and ignoring that feeling. Now, if you don't think anyone would care to join, that's a risk you have to take. I mean, we did Kickstarters for our podcast marathons. We had a couple of them that were pretty successful, for what we were doing. Like we hit our number and we blew out past it. And then the last year we did it when there was more interest in what we were doing than ever before. I had to pull the plug on it. We weren't even close. And I know exactly how it works, like the bell curve of how people pay and all that. And I'm like, I don't see a way that this actually happens. So we pulled the plug on it. We pulled the plug on the whole thing. It happens. So, Chelsea, the way you test that is you could set one up and only have free things on there. See if anybody subscribes. See if anybody gets in on it. They'll do free subscriptions. Then you can poll them. Hey, if I did once a week live chat on Discord with you, or I did flash fiction, on your suggestions, Patreon only suggestions, would you pay $3 or $5? See what they say. That's how you test it. Okay. Chinto, I'm the same, but it's worth just pulling the Band-Aid. Agreed. I only have a $1 tier and one sub at the moment, but makes me feel like I have a goal to reach, and if I continue to build it, they will eventually come. Yes, plus it costs nothing. Right. And Chinto, when we talk, we're going to talk about your tiers and talk about what you can offer. By the way, Chinto has been, he started his newsletter. Let's pimp the newsletter. And in fact, Chinto, if you want to write, because I don't know if I'm going to do it fast enough to get your newsletter, I'm not. Otherwise, I'm going to have to stop talking and look. Put down what your newsletter is so people can subscribe. He has today he had a drawing of a character or a story thing that he had been working on. I loved it so much. I love getting it. You do that for a while, it becomes worth it to pay when you have something that's like, ooh, look at that value up above it. Okay, I'm thinking about getting an AI voice generator to do audiobook of the short stories I'm doing by Christmas time. Be careful though. Make sure that the AI voice generator doesn't sound like AI. Make sure it sounds good. If not, let's talk. See if I can find somebody to help you out with that. James, you'd get a better result by getting an actor friend or making an actor friend and getting them to record them for you. Directly talking to Chinto. You give another creator the opportunity, you give them something they can't get themselves by putting the file through a system themselves. Correct. It gives them something to work with. So once again, you can talk to me. I can see if I have somebody that could help you out with that too. Here it is. MrCalavera.substack.com. I think you're right. That right there is his newsletter. I suggest everybody go and subscribe to it. So here's the thing. You subscribe to it, you start doing your own Substack. Maybe you share one of his things and say like, hey, I thought this one was really cool. He shares one of your things. Oh, hey, that's really cool. Guess what? You have just shared audience. You are now building an audience, which if you build enough audience, you've now started to give yourself permission to market to people and potentially put a paid tier on it. You don't have to have money to have an actor friend that might do something for you, Chinto. Okay, so we can talk about that. We're going to be talking this week. All right. Ooh, we're getting short on time. So what other questions do we have? We've talked a lot today. We've also had a strange amount of people in and out of our chat. Everybody's watching through New Media Lab. I love that. So I am going to make an effort to start putting out the New Media Lab podcast that I have recorded, because there's some fun interviews on there, and I'll start adding to that because it seems like that's where people are going now, which is awesome. There's a lesson. You go where people are paying attention. Couple other things. So there's another comment. Yep. Creatives are often very willing to help each other. That's correct. And there's a lot of creatives in this thread. So if you have questions like that, on the New Media Lab page, when I post this, you can go right in there and start a conversation with people. There are ways on Facebook that you can break out into rooms. If you're like, hey, I just want to have a conversation about this, but we're not friends on Facebook, you can do that through the Facebook groups that you're in. So if you're like, hey, tell me more about this, or I would love to help with that, use New Media Lab as a hub for that. It's a great place for it. You can also do that through Alley Chats, which is my one where I interview people that are people that you would find in Artist Alley, musicians, artists, writers, all of it. Here's a long one. This is from Becca via James. As someone who's working on trying to get an animated series off the ground, I often struggle with finding people who would want to work on it and support my work, as well as editing and polishing my scripts. I've written 9 episodes of a planned 13-episode first season, and I think maybe 6 of them are a presentable, workable project. I had a cast back in 2022, but it was not at all a professional group I was working with. I want to elevate my work. We're going to run out of space on there. And put something that that's all we got. That's all it says so far. Yeah, it's tricky, especially when you're talking a project like that. There's a lot of time commitment. It's almost like you have to have the right people in place that are willing to give. In fact, if I had a project like that and I was trying to get something off the ground, I would do a Kickstarter. I would do something to try to put some funds in so you can pay for voice or animators or that, and get people that'll do it for a cut rate, want to support you, but they don't feel like, oh my god, I just threw 3 months of my life into this project for zero. I want to elevate my work and put something that I'm proud of out there. This is a continuation, but I don't know how to make those connections outside of a college environment. It's tricky. There are ways. So one is going to conventions and telling people exactly what you want and what you do, and asking. Going to networking events. Those things do it. This is outside of the college realm. Facebook groups are a good one. Right now there's I can think of one. There's the International Comic-Con, where International Artists Alley, and it's full of people that are artists and writers. They're all professionals in there generally. That's all I've ever seen in there. And you can get a beat on who are people that might be able to do something, and you can reach out to them through there. That's what that group is for. So you have to think outside of the box. You can't just think, hey, these are people I went to college with, or these are people I specifically know, because that will only get you so far. Kind of like Patreon. If you only think that the people that you know are the ones that are going to support you, well, guess what? That's all that's going to support you, and you will not grow. You won't find the people that actually would support you this way. Same thing with a project, you know? Uh, I'll give you an example. Like a friend of mine, I helped him with a Kickstarter for a film. At the end of it, he asked if I wanted to help be a producer on his next film. Well, guess what? That is a dream of mine. He found me uh, through channels outside of the regular channels. He could go out there and say, "Hey, I need a producer," and start talking to all his friends. But he found me because he saw my work, he saw what I did, and he asked. And he was like, "I'm sure I can't afford you." I'm like, "Nope, don't be sure of that. Let's talk." Connections are tricky. The way we've built it is going to Comic Cons. That was our the start of everything. Going to Comic Cons, creating our own events, and making sure we stayed in touch with people. Chelsea. Oh yeah, I'm in quite a few writing groups that have everyone in there: illustrators, voice actors, beta readers, as well as other authors. I haven't utilized this much, but I like being a part of them and interacting with them. Some so I could maybe reach out if I need something. Building those connections now. Spot on. Sometimes the people that you grew up with are not very reliable, do not share the same passion for the project. It gets complicated, but I do know it is not impossible. That is very true. Uh, it used to make me crazy. I would see, Kevin Smith putting out these indie films back before he was Kevin Smith, and I would see these and I'd be like, these are all his friends. So many of them are friends he grew up with, which means they bought into his passion and they were willing to move the needle. And it made me crazy because I felt like I didn't have that. I mean, I have obviously Maeve and Molly. Like I have my family here that will move the needle, but I never felt like my friend group growing up that they were reliable enough to move the needle. I tried to be for them. Did that mean they were bad friends? No, they're humans. You know, he happened to fall in with a bunch of humans that went with it. But you can build that other army outside of that by networking, by meeting people, by working on it. Gino, I always wanted my own View Askew crew. Okay, we're losing people. It's after 9:00. So let me say two more quick things. One is I know we've talked about it before, but I do offer free consultations. If you want to have a call with me and we can do a session, see if there's anything I can do to help you. Another thing is, and this is something I have not really made public, I also, for those of you that need a website, I do basic website. If you want to see one, I'm going to write it in here. That just went everywhere. So at shoshanaedwards.com, she was unhappy with her website, and I said, "Here, let me take care of it." I did it at a very reasonable rate. It's not like super flashy. I don't put any flash animation or anything. It's a straightforward, really solid landing page that has her books available, and every single person that has commented to me about it, every single one has gone, "Oh my God, it's beautiful." Yeah, because we're not making anything flashy. We're making a really professional, nice landing page, and I do have that service. So anyone that needs one, talk to me. I can only take a couple a month because they do take time, but I'm happy to build it from the ground up. I do it in WordPress so that we can actually play with SEO and things that will make it work for you. When you do it in Wix, when you do it in Squarespace, even though they say they have SEO tools, they have the tools, but they don't work the way you think. You've got to build it in WordPress in order to make that work to get noticed by Google. There's a little pro tip. And I do that. So there we go, everybody. Thank you so much. Yeah, I wrote that right. Thank you so much for joining me. And we will definitely be back next week. And I'm hoping Thursday is going to be the first happy hour I have it on my schedule. We'll know by tomorrow, and I'll post something. So we might be doing something Thursday night as well. All right. Thanks again, everybody. And for anybody that has appointments with me, I will talk to you this week. I am so excited. Have a great day. Have a great Easter if you celebrate that. If not, have a great Sunday. See ya.